The Untold Truth of Prince Philip's Secret Affairs. For decades, Prince Philip stood beside one of the most famous women in the world. As the husband of Queen Elizabeth II, he lived a life that was unlike almost anyone else. Every movement was watched, every word was analyzed, and every rumor became a matter of public fascination. But behind the official image of a royal consort, there was another story that captured the attention of the public for generations. It was a story filled with rumors, unanswered questions, friendships, and speculation about relationships that existed away from the palace walls. Prince Philip was born into a world of privilege, but his early life was far from simple. His family was connected to European royalty, yet his childhood was marked by instability. After political changes forced his family into exile from Greece, Philip's life became a journey through different countries, schools, and cultures. As a young man, he developed a reputation for confidence, charm, and independence. He was athletic, intelligent, and known for his strong personality. These qualities would later help him become one of the most recognized figures in the world. When Philip met Princess Elizabeth, their relationship slowly developed into one of the most important royal marriages in modern history. They married in 1947, years before Elizabeth became queen. At the beginning, their marriage was viewed as a symbol of hope and stability. Philip was young, energetic, and brought a different style into the traditional royal environment. However, as the years passed, public attention turned toward a different question. Was Prince Philip always faithful? The rumors surrounding Prince Philip's personal life became one of the longest-running mysteries connected to the British royal family. Many stories appeared in newspapers and biographies claiming that Philip had close relationships with other women. Some accounts described friendships that were completely innocent, while others suggested something more. One of the reasons the rumors continued for so long was Philip's personality. He was known to be outgoing, humorous, and comfortable around people from many different backgrounds. He often spent time with artists, actresses, aristocrats, and public figures. In a world where royal behavior was carefully controlled, Philip sometimes appeared unusually relaxed. This created fascination. People began asking whether his friendships were simply friendships, or whether there was a hidden side to his life that the public never saw. Several women were frequently mentioned in connection with him over the years. Among them were social figures, entertainers, and women from elite circles. But many of these stories were never proven, and some were strongly denied by people close to Philip. The truth about royal private lives is often difficult to separate from imagination. A famous person can become surrounded by stories simply because the public wants to believe there is a secret behind the image. Prince Philip understood this world better than most. He knew that being married to the Queen meant every rumor could become international news. Yet he rarely responded publicly to personal accusations. Instead, he focused on his duties. For more than 7 decades, Philip supported Elizabeth through political changes, family struggles, and enormous public pressure. He became a key figure in the monarchy, even though his role was often complicated. The question of his alleged affairs remained part of his public story. Some historians argue that the rumors were exaggerated by a media culture fascinated with royal drama. Others believe that, like many powerful figures throughout history, Philip may have had relationships that stayed outside the official record. But the reality is more complicated than a simple yes or no answer. The royal world has always been full of appearances. Behind formal ceremonies, carefully chosen words, and public smiles were human beings with emotions, disagreements, friendships, and personal choices. Prince Philip's life was not just a story of rumors. It was also a story of duty, sacrifice, and adaptation. A man who began life as an exiled prince became the longest-serving royal consort in British history. Yet even after his death, one mystery continues to attract attention. What was the real story behind Prince Philip's private relationships? To understand that, we need to look beyond the headlines and explore the people, the rumors, and the historical reality behind one of the most discussed royal figures of the modern era. As the years passed, Prince Philip's image became a mixture of admiration and controversy. To many people, he was the loyal husband who stood beside Queen Elizabeth II through a changing world. To others, he was a mysterious figure whose private life raised questions that were never fully answered. The fascination with Philip's alleged affairs did not appear suddenly. It grew slowly over decades, shaped by newspaper reports, royal biographies, and stories shared among those who claimed to know the inner circles of the monarchy. But the world of royalty has always been difficult to understand from the outside. A friendship between two powerful people could easily become a rumor. A private conversation could become a headline. A simple social connection could be transformed into a story of scandal. This was especially true for Prince Philip because of his position. He was not just a normal husband. He was the husband of the Queen. Every person he met could become a subject of public interest. During the early years of his marriage, Philip had to adjust to a unique challenge. Elizabeth's role changed dramatically when she became queen in 1952. Suddenly, her husband had to stand beside her while also accepting that he would never hold the same official power. For a man known for independence and confidence, this was not always easy. Some historians believe that Philip's strong personality created tension inside the royal household. He was used to being active, commanding, and involved. But as the Queen's husband, he had to find a different identity. This struggle became an important part of understanding his character. Philip was often described as someone who enjoyed conversation, adventure, and meeting interesting people. He traveled widely, attended countless events, and built friendships across the world. Among the people he met were women who later became linked to rumors about him. One name that appeared frequently in discussions was actress and dancer figures from the entertainment world. Because Philip was charismatic and socially active, many observers believed he attracted attention wherever he went. But attraction and rumors are not the same thing. A number of biographies have repeated claims about Philip's relationships, but evidence has often been limited. Some stories came from anonymous sources, while others were based on interpretations rather than confirmed facts. This created a complicated situation. The public wanted a hidden royal secret. The reality was often much less dramatic. Another factor was the culture of the time. In the middle of the 20th century, wealthy and famous men were often surrounded by rumors of romantic connections. Royal families were not immune to this. The British monarchy itself had a long history of complicated personal relationships. Past kings and princes had experienced scandals, and people naturally looked for similar patterns in later generations. Philip's personality also contributed to the mystery. He was famous for his sharp humor and sometimes controversial remarks. He could be charming, but also unpredictable. Some people saw him as traditional and disciplined, while others saw him as someone who enjoyed breaking expectations. This contrast made him interesting. A person who followed royal duties for decades could still appear rebellious in private moments. The question of loyalty became even more fascinating because Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip remained married for more than 70 years. Their marriage survived enormous pressure. They experienced political changes, family conflicts, media storms, and personal challenges. They were together through the rise of television, the transformation of society, and the modernization of the monarchy. Supporters of Philip often point to this long partnership as evidence that their relationship was strong. Critics argue that a long marriage does not automatically answer every question about private life. Both perspectives exist. The truth may never be completely known. What is clear is that Prince Philip lived in a world where privacy was almost impossible. His friendships were watched, his behavior was analyzed, and his every interaction could become a story. The mystery surrounding his alleged affairs remains because the line between fact and rumor has always been blurred. And behind every rumor was a bigger question. Who was the real Prince Philip when the cameras were gone? Was he simply a devoted royal figure with a large social circle? Or was there another side of him hidden away from public view? To understand the full story, we must examine the people closest to him, the accusations that followed him, and the reality of life inside one of the world's most famous families. The story of Prince Philip's private life cannot be understood without looking at the world around him. The royal family existed in a unique environment where tradition, duty, and public expectations often collided with ordinary human emotions. For most people, friendships and personal relationships happen away from public attention. But for Prince Philip, almost every friendship could become a topic of discussion. The palace was not just a home, it was a place where history was constantly being written. From the beginning of his marriage to Queen Elizabeth II, Philip's role was unusual. He was a husband, but also a public figure. He had to support the Queen while maintaining his own identity. This created a complicated balance. Some observers believe that Philip struggled with losing parts of his previous independence after Elizabeth became monarch. Before that, he had been a naval officer, a young prince with his own ambitions and a strong sense of adventure. After becoming the Queen's husband, his life became connected almost entirely to her role. He could not simply choose his own path. Instead, he had to adapt. This adaptation shaped his personality in public. He became known for his work ethic, his involvement with charitable organizations, and his dedication to official duties. But at the same time, rumors about his private life continued. One of the reasons these rumors lasted so long was because Philip often spent time away from the Queen due to royal responsibilities. He traveled frequently, attended international events, and met thousands of people. For someone in his position, a large social circle was unavoidable. However, some journalists and writers claim that certain friendships went beyond normal social connections. Names of various women appeared in books and articles over the years. Some were famous, some were part of aristocratic circles, and some were simply people who crossed paths with Philip during his long public life. But the challenge is separating confirmed history from repeated speculation. A rumor repeated many times can begin to feel like a fact, even when clear evidence is missing. This is one of the biggest problems when studying famous figures. The more famous someone becomes, the more stories grow around them. Prince Philip was no exception. Another reason people remained fascinated was the contrast between his public image and the rumors surrounding him. Publicly, he was the man who stood beside the Queen for decades. He attended ceremonies, represented the monarchy, and became a symbol of stability. Privately, some imagined a completely different character. This contrast created a powerful mystery. The idea of a serious royal figure having a hidden life has always fascinated the public. History is filled with similar stories about rulers, leaders, and celebrities. Sometimes the rumors are true. Sometimes they are exaggerated. Sometimes the truth exists somewhere between the two. Philip's case is especially complicated because people close to him often described him differently. Some said he was deeply devoted to Elizabeth. They pointed to their long partnership, their shared experiences, and the way they supported each other during difficult moments. Others argued that his personality and lifestyle created opportunities for relationships outside the marriage. The debate continued because neither side could completely prove its position. But perhaps the most important part of the story is understanding that royal marriages are not ordinary marriages. The pressure is different. The expectations are different. The public attention is different. Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip lived almost their entire adult lives under observation. Every disagreement, every friendship, and every decision could be judged by millions of people. Yet they continued together. They built a family, represented a nation, and remain one of the longest-lasting partnerships in modern royal history. Still, the unanswered questions remained. The whispers, the stories, the mysteries. They became part of the legend of Prince Philip. And as we look deeper into the accounts surrounding him, we discover that the truth is not always found in the loudest headlines. Sometimes it is hidden in the details, in forgotten moments, personal letters, and the complicated reality of a man who lived between duty and desire. The mystery surrounding Prince Philip's alleged affairs became one of those stories that seemed impossible to separate from his public identity. For decades, people debated the same question. Was there a hidden side of Philip's life that the world never fully saw? The answer depends on which sources people choose to believe. Some writers portrayed Philip as a man who enjoyed attention and admiration. They described him as someone who was confident, social, and comfortable in the company of women. Others argued that his personality was simply misunderstood. A man who spent his life meeting thousands of people could naturally develop many close friendships without those relationships becoming romantic. This difference in interpretation is what made the subject so controversial. Prince Philip was part of a generation where powerful public figures often had different expectations for men and women. The social rules of the 20th century were not the same as today, and royal life followed its own traditions. The monarchy valued appearance, stability, and continuity. A public scandal could damage not only one person, but the reputation of the entire institution. Because of this, the royal family often handled private matters quietly. Very little was openly discussed. This silence created curiosity. When people do not have answers, they often create their own explanations. Throughout Philip's life, many stories appeared about his friendships with different women. Some stories came from journalists searching for a headline. Others came from people claiming inside knowledge of royal circles. But historians face a major challenge. Not every story has strong evidence. A rumor can survive for decades simply because it is interesting. The more famous the person, the longer the rumor can last. Philip's relationship with Queen Elizabeth was also unusual because their marriage was built around public duty. They were not simply two private individuals. They represented an institution. From the outside, their relationship looked formal and traditional. But those who knew them often described moments of humor, affection, and mutual respect. Philip frequently supported Elizabeth in ways that were not always visible to the public. He attended thousands of engagements, stood beside her during important events, and adjusted his own ambitions to support her role. This raised another important question. Could a person have flaws and still be deeply committed? History often shows that human beings are complicated. Leaders, celebrities, and historical figures are rarely completely perfect or completely terrible. Prince Philip was no different. He could be described as loyal and hardworking, while also being criticized for his behavior and personality. Both images existed. The fascination with his alleged affairs also came from the fact that Philip was surrounded by glamour. He moved through a world of royal celebrations, international travel, famous personalities, and wealthy circles. For many ordinary people, that world seemed almost unreal. A prince traveling the world, meeting celebrities, and living among the elite naturally became the subject of imagination. But behind the image was a person dealing with pressure. Philip had to live with constant attention while trying to maintain a sense of normal life. The question of whether he had secret affairs may never receive a complete historical answer. Some claims will remain debated. Some stories will remain impossible to verify. But the larger story is about a man who spent over 7 decades at the center of history. Prince Philip's life included achievement, controversy, criticism, and admiration. His marriage survived changing times, public pressure, and countless rumors. And perhaps the most revealing part of his story is not only the question of what happened behind closed doors, but how he managed to remain one of the most influential royal figures of the modern era. Because sometimes the greatest mysteries are not hidden because they are impossible to discover. They remain mysteries because history itself is complicated. As the years moved forward, Prince Philip's name became connected to a wider conversation about power, reputation, and the private lives of public figures. The world was changing around him. The old rules of royalty were being challenged by a new era of television, newspapers, and eventually the internet. The private lives of famous people were no longer protected in the same way. Every generation wanted to know more. And Prince Philip, because of his position, became one of the most closely observed men in the world. The rumors about his personal relationships often focused on his time away from the palace. His royal duties required him to travel, attend events, and meet people across the globe. For someone who lived such a public life, privacy was almost impossible. A simple photograph could create speculation. A conversation could become a story. A friendship could become a rumor. This was the environment surrounding him. Some biographies and reports suggested that Philip had relationships that went beyond friendship. These claims became part of popular culture, repeated in discussions about the monarchy. However, many historians have pointed out that much of the evidence behind these claims is uncertain. There are differences between documented facts and stories passed from one person to another. Understanding that difference is important. The history of famous people is often shaped not only by what happened, but also by what people believe happened. Prince Philip's character added another layer to the mystery. He was known for being outspoken. Unlike many members of the royal family who carefully controlled every word, Philip sometimes spoke directly and without hesitation. This made him appear more human to some people, but it also created criticism. His confidence could be seen as charm by supporters and arrogance by critics. The same personality trait could be interpreted in completely different ways. This also affected how people viewed the rumors about him. A person who appeared independent and confident was more likely to be imagined as someone who lived by his own rules. But personality alone does not prove anything about private behavior. The truth about a person's relationships exists in private moments, not in public assumptions. Another important part of the story is Queen Elizabeth herself. She and Philip experienced a marriage unlike almost any other in modern history. They were together during wars, political changes, family difficulties, and decades of public attention. Their relationship was not always simple, no long marriages, but they remained connected through a shared understanding of duty. Philip often described his role as supporting the Queen, and he spent much of his life doing exactly that. Behind the formal appearances, there was a partnership built over time. This does not automatically answer every question about rumors. It simply shows that reality is often more complex than a single headline. The fascination with Prince Philip's alleged affairs continued because people were interested in the difference between the official image and the private person. The official image was clear: a prince, a husband, a royal servant, a figure of tradition. But the private person was harder to understand. He had friendships, opinions, frustrations, humor, and personal struggles like anyone else. The mystery existed because the public saw only part of the picture. And perhaps that is what made Prince Philip such an interesting historical figure. He represented an old world of monarchy, but he lived through a modern age that demanded transparency. He was expected to be perfect, yet he was human. He was expected to disappear behind the Queen's role, yet he had his own powerful personality. The story of his alleged secret affairs remains one of the most discussed parts of his legacy. But the full story of Prince Philip is much larger than rumors. It is a story of a man who spent his entire life balancing personal identity with public responsibility. And the deeper we look into his life, the more we discover that the truth is rarely as simple as people want it to be. The longer Prince Philip lived, the more his public image became divided into two different versions. One version showed him as a devoted royal figure who dedicated his life to supporting the queen. The other showed him as a complicated man surrounded by rumors and unanswered questions. Both images existed at the same time, and this is what made his story so fascinating. Unlike many historical figures whose lives can be clearly divided into heroes and villains, Prince Philip's story was much more complicated. He was a person shaped by his childhood, his experiences, his responsibilities, and the unusual world he lived in. To understand the rumors about his relationships, it is important to understand the environment around him. Royal life was not normal life. Members of the royal family often spent years surrounded by staff, officials, and social circles that were completely different from ordinary society. Their friendships happened in a world of private clubs, formal events, diplomatic gatherings, and international travel. This created opportunities for close relationships that outsiders could easily misunderstand. Philip was naturally social. He enjoyed conversations, debates, sports, and meeting people with different ideas. He was known for having a wide range of interests and for connecting with people from many backgrounds. This personality made him popular in some circles, but it also made him a subject of speculation. A charismatic person in a powerful position often attracts attention. Throughout history, kings, presidents, celebrities, and wealthy figures have faced similar rumors. Sometimes those rumors revealed real events. Sometimes they revealed society's fascination with powerful people. The challenge is knowing the difference. Several stories about Philip's private life became famous over the years. Some were repeated so often that many people assumed they must be true. But repetition does not always equal proof. A story can become part of public memory even when the original evidence is unclear. This is why historians approach royal rumors carefully. They examine documents, reliable accounts, and the context of the time. They ask, who made the claim? When was it made? Was there evidence? Was it supported by multiple trustworthy sources? Without these answers, a rumor remains a rumor. Another reason Philip's private life attracted attention was because of the expectations placed on him. As the Queen's husband, he was expected to represent strength, loyalty, and dignity. The public often wanted him to be an ideal figure. But Philip was known for being imperfect. He made mistakes. He created controversy with some of his comments. He sometimes appeared impatient with the restrictions of royal life. This made people wonder if his private behavior was equally unconventional. The connection was not always fair, but it influenced public perception. The truth is that a person's personality cannot automatically reveal their private choices. A bold personality does not prove wrongdoing. A quiet personality does not guarantee perfection. Human beings are more complicated than that. For Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip, the biggest challenge was not only personal, it was institutional. Their marriage represented stability for the monarchy itself. Every public problem had the potential to become a national issue. This meant that private difficulties were often handled away from public attention. The public saw ceremonies. They saw official appearances. They saw carefully prepared images. But they did not see the everyday reality of their relationship. And perhaps that is why the mystery lasted so long. People wanted to know what happened behind the palace walls. They wanted to see the person behind the title. Prince Philip's story reminds us that history is not only made by events, it is also made by questions. Some questions are answered. Some remain forever. The rumors surrounding his alleged affairs may continue to be discussed for generations, but they are only one part of a much larger story. The real history of Prince Philip is the story of a man who spent more than 70 years living under the weight of a crown he never wore. A man who was famous but rarely fully understood. A man whose public duties were visible to everyone, while his private world remained mostly hidden. And that hidden world is where the mystery continues. The story of Prince Philip's alleged secret affairs is one of the most debated and fascinating chapters connected to the modern British royal family. For decades, people searched for answers. They looked through biographies, newspaper reports, interviews, and historical accounts, hoping to discover the truth behind the rumors. But the reality of a person's private life is rarely as simple as a headline. Prince Philip lived almost his entire adult life under a level of attention that few people could ever imagine. Every public appearance was recorded. Every friendship was observed. Every decision was analyzed. In such a world, rumors could grow quickly. A meeting could become a mystery. A friendship could become a controversy. A private moment could become a story repeated for generations. Some claims about Philip's personal relationships have been widely discussed over the years, while others remain unconfirmed or disputed. The lack of clear evidence means that many stories continue to exist somewhere between history and speculation. But one thing is undeniable. Prince Philip's life was extraordinary. He began as a young prince forced to leave his homeland, experienced a challenging childhood, built a military career, and eventually became the longest-serving royal consort in British history. His role was unique. He was never the king, yet he stood beside the Queen for more than 7 decades. He supported Elizabeth through some of the most difficult moments of the modern monarchy. Their marriage survived enormous changes. The world changed, society changed, the monarchy changed, but their partnership remained. This does not erase the questions people have asked about his private life. It simply shows that human relationships are complex. A person can be admired and criticized. A person can be loyal in some ways and imperfect in others. History often refuses to give simple answers. The fascination with Prince Philip's alleged affairs continued because people were curious about the difference between the public image and the private person. The public saw the prince. The private world belonged to him, and perhaps that is the greatest mystery. Not whether every rumor was true or false, but how little we truly know about the personal lives of those who spend their existence in the spotlight. Prince Philip's legacy will always include many different stories. To some, he will be remembered as a dedicated husband, a hardworking royal, and a figure who helped modernize the monarchy. To others, he will remain a controversial personality surrounded by unanswered questions. But history rarely remembers people as only one thing. Behind the title was a human being, a man with strengths and weaknesses, a man shaped by duty, tradition, ambition, and personal choices. The untold truth about Prince Philip may not be a single shocking secret hidden away forever. Instead, it may be the reality that even the most famous people in the world remain complicated, and the full story of a life is often much deeper than the rumors surrounding it. Prince Philip's journey was filled with power, responsibility, mystery, and history. And that is why, even after his passing, the world continues to ask, who was the real Prince Philip when nobody was watching? Perhaps the answer will always remain part of history's greatest unanswered questions.